If you are trying to do a ketogenic diet or a low carb diet and you are trying to fix that leaking gut, which I'd say 99% of us have because there's heavy metals in the air and our water's garbage. But besides those things, I'm going to break down why I say no cheese, no nuts, no caffeine. I've been saying it for years, and it's time to address this subject again. Welcome everyone to my very humble life. Alright, I'm gonna pop right on into this because I need to get back to building my house. Years ago, I said no cheese, no nuts, no caffeine. And the world out there, this is like 10 years ago. People went bonkers. They said I was ridiculous. They threw up my videos onto Reddit and began to demolish. Well, they tried to demolish me, but clearly they didn't. But they really went after the concepts I was talking about, saying I was full of crap and I wasn't a doctor and I didn't know what I was, I'm just stupid, essentially. And I mean, people would send me screenshots of these discussions because at the time, nobody was talking that way. They were like, yeah, do your butter coffee, and hey, you can get your fats in with some nuts, and cheese is great in ketogenic recipes. You heard this stuff nonstop. But the reason why I started to reject these foods was because the people I was consulting, the actual people I was communicating with, were getting sick from those foods. And I mean the majority of them. At that juncture, a light bulb went off as to what's really going on behind these foods. Why are people having a hard time to adapt just having a little bit of cheese? I mean, haven't they been doing it for a couple hundred years in Europe? And I mean, nuts can grow wild, and caffeine, I mean, people drink coffee all over the world. This waking up of my brain started when I was working with a woman who was covered in rashes, and we were going over her diet. She had severe mast cell activation. I mean, histamine on top of histamine on top of histamine, which is basically inflammation. And I mean, I've learned now, after consulting 10,000 people, most of you have this. Most of you. You have some type of inflammatory response, histamine. This one woman that woke me up, we went over her diet implicitly. We went over it and over and over it. And we tried to make changes, but we kept those food groups in. And it wasn't until we eliminated these foods did her skin and her histamine explosion calm down. So from then, I started analyzing everyone who ate those foods. Because at the time, Bulletproof, Dave Asprey, that's it, I was trying to remember his name. Dave Asprey was pushing his butter coffee. And I just intuitively was like, this can't be good. This can't be good. Because people are already having problems on coffee. And he's saying it's mycotoxin free, which is pretty much mold free, which is impossible to keep mold off of your food. I mean, you can try to minimize it, but you're not going to get rid of all of it. And he was pushing this mold free coffee. And they would push the fact that it helps with your brain and vasodilation, and it has antioxidants. And then, but no, and it's talking about the roasting process. Oh, but you can lightly roast it. But then you get the plant chemicals like the tannins. Get rid of it. But let's go into each one of these foods, and I'm going to break down the problems. Start with cheese. I mean, cheese, people have been eating it all the time. Now, there are different types of cheeses that are not so inflammatory, like cheese that comes from goat and sheep, but often they are fed corn or grain because it's cheap. So then you just adopt another problem, so then their milk isn't good. But most farms are producing A1 cows, the black and white cows, and in dairy farms that are just, let's just say, unhealthy practices. That right there is already inflammatory. Besides me even getting to the whey and casein, these are proteins, have growth factors in them, and they're supposed to take a little calf and grow it into like a huge bull. If it's a male, huge, a heifer, 1,000 pound. So when people who have a leaking gut, and they develop this because they eat wheat and the gluten, the protein and the grain, because that's been genetically modified to oblivion, is agitating your small intestinal wall. Well, that wall is where food gets absorbed into the bloodstream. So if you start drilling holes all through that wall, your gut starts leaking. Things start leaking from the small intestine into the bloodstream, and then you have an explosion of histamine and stress and inflammation on the body. And even though the seeds from Europe are better, you still have the problem with gluten when consumed in excess, if you have a perfect gut and you weren't schmaxinated or something as a kid. But if you were, and you've been exposed to antibiotics and pharmaceuticals as a child, and just pretty much garbage food, that gut's destroyed. I'm sorry. And most of us, including myself. And that's why I work so hard to fix the gut. Now I don't believe you can completely 1000% fix that gut, because I'm still being exposed to toxins and stresses. So let's get in my house. We stop stressing. But I've improved it 99%, which speaks volumes in the way that you age and the ability to absorb vitamins and minerals. Because if you have a leaking gut, maybe that's why you're vitamin D deficient even when you're in the sun. Or if you do a vitamin D3, UVA, and UVB lamp, you're still low D, the gut. So casein is super inflammatory as a protein, and cheese is largely casein. That protein is the worst. This really drills holes. In fact, if you couldn't tolerate bread and then you still ate cheese, something happens. It's called cross reactivity, and that's where the brain starts seeing cheese, that casein, that protein, as opposed to the wheat gluten protein, has the same thing. So your gut still continues to leak. Even though you feel better not having wheat, you're not fixed. And it could be that cheese. I really want to say it is, but we'll say it could be. Okay. Cheese has a casomorphine effect. That's why when you eat it, you want it more and more and more. It's addictive, like a pharmaceutical thing. You don't want to have that type of casomorphine effect when you're trying to get rid of a food that's drilling holes in the gut wall. So you're going to have to abstain. Casein is super inflammatory. Not only does it open the holes in the gut wall and constipate you, but it has that casomorphine effect, like morphine. Get rid of it. And it's a mold. And you have a leak, sandwich double whammy of nonsense. Like you have a leaking gut, it opens the holes even more. And then you crave it more, it constipates you. And then on top of that, it's a mold where you're just contributing to the gut dysbiosis, the imbalance of gut bacteria times a billion. Let's talk about the nuts. The nuts have phytic acid in them. Most of them. Now, macadamia nuts are very low in phytic acid because they're high in fat. The composition is largely a bunch of fat, which is low in phytic acid. Whereas the other nuts who are lower in fat, which is omega-6, whereas macadamia nuts are mainly monounsaturated fat. But the problem is, with the whole little thing going on in Japan with the little fallout, that kind of floating over Hawaii where the macadamia nuts are being cultivated. If you don't get it one way, you get it another. I know. Okay. Nuts, basically, what they do is they rob your body of minerals. Magnesium and iron, zinc, No wonder you guys are iron deficient, right? Women who are iron deficient, or men. Why are men iron deficient? I mean, they don't bleed. So, like menstrual cycle. Yeah. You can eat a nut, crunch it all up. Your body doesn't absorb it, right? The actual meat. And you can go and walk 2 miles, which is the way nature provides, and poop and start growing a plant. Because it's the baby plant. That is like what Mother Nature wants to protect to the umpteenth degree. So people start developing a lot of deficiencies, and like brittle nails, and then their hair breaks off, and just their gut is still jacked, and then there's mold on it. So you have the same problem with the mold. So you create a leaking gut through the phytic acid, and then the mold double whammies you and makes your gut extremely fracked up. So that is the nuts. Let's get to that caffeine. I've done a million videos, but let's summarize it real quick. We're talking your matcha teas, your green tea, your white tea, caffeine, your caffeine pre-workout, whatever, the caffeine pills. Now, not only do they mess with the mucus lining of your stomach, which lowers your stomach acid, very acidic to the blood. Well, it also is a tannin, can rob your body of minerals, just like those nuts. What else? Oh, there's more. Tons of mold. So we get that double whammy effect of growing a bunch of mold, but then the caffeine will speed up that mold growth. I know. But it lowers L-tyrosine. This is an amino acid that makes you sleep. Yeah. And melatonin. And it messes up your cortisol rhythm, and it dehydrates you, skyrockets your blood sugar. I mean, it's terrible. So you're having headaches, and it's a vasodilator. We'll find a way to dilate your vessels without using this, which comes with a handbag of problems. Not worth it. And it dehydrates you. People doing these low-carb diets cannot do anything that dehydrates them because they're already dehydrated with low blood pressure. Most of you. Some of you have high because your blood sugars are way skyrocketing. Which caffeine is going to put your body in the sympathetic fight or flight mode because of the cortisol release, which messes with your sex hormones through pregnenolone steal. Let thee count the ways of how bad coffee is. But then it's like one of the most heavily sprayed crops on the planet. It's like $1 trillion business. People drink coffee around the world. So you're being exposed to these chemicals. Need I say more? With your cup of joe, as you're aging, you look at these people and their pores are huge. They're toxic. I can always see when people have been drinking. I just look at their face, like right around there. It's that coffee face. Y'all don't see it, but because I work with so many people, I see it all day, every day. So quit with the nuts, quit with the caffeine. Now I'm going to give you a little bleep of other things to look out for. I'm going to do a breakdown of these foods, but this is just a little peekaboo comment. Fermented foods, milk, anything that's not grass-fed, that's milk. But even milk that is grass-fed raw, and cheese. Yeah. We also have the fermented foods like sauerkraut. Careful. The amount of oxalates you consume. Yes. Also, things that are high histamine. Fish. This is people with severe mast cell activation. My phone's ringing. What? No. And just like that, I'm back. I'm in the middle of trying to film a video, but because I'm building a house, there's so many people like calling and at the gate to bring materials. I think I'm going to do more videos on the subject of fermented foods and the food lists, the approved, the not approved, and why, because that's so important for you guys to understand that if you're trying to heal the gut wall, even things like aged meats can be a problem. Your bacon can be a problem. Where do you source your meats? That's if you have mast cell activation. And if you're trying to get better, you got to look at how they feed the animal. Other gurus might say like, oh, it doesn't matter, just do a carnivore diet. But we're starting to realize it does matter. That's the point of doing a carnivore diet and fixing the gut. And then you're not fixing the gut because you're eating these foods, especially with the dairy and the cheese people. You want to do the A1 cow, my people, and start looking for your local farms because they are just demolishing us these days. I mean, just look around. Okay? That is the reason why I left California. Okay, my Instagram is Stephanie Ketogenic. My Facebook fan page is Stephanie the Business Person. I do run a course where I cover all 3 diets and I go more into depth about these things and show people there those foods that you can consume and not consume according to your gut health and your level of sensitivity and tolerance. Yeah. And I also do consultations, so if you guys feel like you're stuck, I'm your girl. I've been doing this a long time. Thousands of people. And I've learned a lot. That's the only place I get my information from. I don't listen to nothing else no more. I just listen to you guys. And I'm out. Energy on this beautiful day. The sun is out and the sun is shining, and I need to get outside because it's been cold the last 4 days and it just got warm and everything just unfroze. And peace.